On the surface, we were the perfect power couple. But looking back, there were those tiny cracks that I ignored or brushed off. Like how Emily started working those late nights more frequently, or how she became super protective of her phone. At first, I thought it was just the demands of her job, but deep down, something felt off. I mean, who doesn't have busy periods, right? The first real red flag was when I noticed she'd get these vague texts late at night and quickly hide her phone when I walked by. I shrugged it off, telling myself I was being paranoid. Then there were the little lies, saying she was at a client meeting when she was actually out with someone else. It hurt, but I kept telling myself that communication is key, so I tried to talk to her about it. She'd dismiss my concerns with a smile and a promise that everything was fine. Our weekends became a bit awkward too. Instead of spending quality time together, Emily started hanging out with friends I didn't know much about. I felt sidelined, like I was losing her, but again, I convinced myself it was just a phase. I started feeling this gnawing suspicion, a mix of anxiety and doubt that I couldn't shake off. Little did I know, these feelings were just the tip of the iceberg. It was a chilly October evening, and I was wrapping up a particularly grueling case at the firm. I decided to swing by our place early, hoping to surprise Emily with a home-cooked dinner. After all, we hadn't had much quality time lately, what with her busy schedule and my endless work hours. As I walked in, the house was eerily quiet. Emily wasn't answering her phone, which was unusual for her. I shrugged it off and headed to the kitchen to start prepping. That's when I noticed something odd. There was an unfamiliar keychain hanging on the back of our bedroom door. It wasn't ours. Curious, I picked it up and saw initials engraved, JT. My heart skipped a beat. Who was JT? I had no idea. Maybe a colleague or a friend she hadn't mentioned? I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling and continued with dinner preparations. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Later that night, after we'd eaten, I decided to check our phone bills out of sheer curiosity. What I found next was a nightmare. There were numerous calls and texts between Emily and someone named Jason Thompson. The messages weren't just friendly, they were flirtatious and explicit. Words like, miss you, can't wait to see you, and references to our secret nights were plastered across the screen. I felt like the rug had been yanked out from under me. 3 years. How long had this been going on? My mind raced with questions. Was this the reason behind her recent behavior? The missed calls, the hidden messages, the unexplained absences? Desperate for answers, I reached out to my friend Mike, who works in IT. Maybe he could help me dig deeper into the phone records or find more concrete evidence. Mike was always the tech-savvy one, and I trusted him to handle this discreetly. He agreed to meet up the next day to go through everything. That night, sleep eluded me. My thoughts were a chaotic mix of betrayal, anger, and confusion. How could Emily lie to me for so long? What did Jason mean to her? And the most terrifying part, what was she planning? After getting all that damning evidence from Mike, I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I had to confront Emily, no matter how much it might tear our lives apart. I decided to do it the next evening. I wanted it to be just the two of us, away from any distractions. I cooked our favorite meal, chicken Alfredo, and set the table nicely, trying to muster up some courage. As I sat down, Emily walked in, looking as flawless as ever. But there was something different in her eyes, a flicker of something I couldn't quite place. I took a deep breath and laid it all out. Emily, we need to talk. I found your messages with Jason. 3 years, Emily. How could you? Her face went from composed to a cold mask in seconds. She laughed, a short, sharp sound that sent chills down my spine. Oh, come on, John. You're overreacting. It's not a big deal. I wasn't having any of it. Not a big deal? Flirting, secret meetings, lying about your whereabouts, it is a big deal. What have you been doing all these years? She scoffed, brushing off her hair. You're just insecure. Jason is just a friend. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I could feel my blood boiling. A friend? Really? What about the secret nights and the explicit messages? Her eyes narrowed. You're twisting everything. Maybe you're the one with issues, not me. I grabbed her phone, holding it between us. These messages tell a different story, Emily. Care to explain how you can be so cold and dismissive about something so personal? Her facade cracked for a moment. Fine. Yes, I had an affair. Happy now? But it meant nothing, John. It was just sex. Nothing more. That was the punch to the gut. I felt a mix of rage and profound sadness. Just sex. You destroyed our marriage for just sex. She rolled her eyes. At least I didn't spend every waking hour buried in your work. Maybe if you showed a little appreciation instead of always being so distant, I wouldn't have looked for attention elsewhere. Her words hit harder than any physical blow. I stood up, trying to keep my voice steady. So, you chose him over me because I'm too busy? Is that it? She crossed her arms defensively. It's not like that. You never make time for me. I needed someone who actually cared. I felt a surge of determination. You know what, Emily? You wanted attention. Well, I'm not going to just sit here and let you ruin my life. If you think you can just walk out after 3 years, think again. Before she could respond, the power went out, plunging us into darkness. I fumbled for my phone to use as a flashlight, but Emily was already moving towards the bedroom door. What the hell is going on? I demanded. Suddenly, I heard the sound of glass shattering upstairs. My heart raced. Emily, what's happening? She froze for a moment before smirking. Looks like your precious home has its own secrets. I grabbed a flashlight and cautiously made my way upstairs, every step echoing in the silence. Reaching our bedroom, I found the window shattered, glass strewn across the floor. My mind raced. Was this part of her plan? Had she been plotting something? Then I saw it, a note pinned to the window with a single red nail. It read, "This is just the beginning." My stomach dropped. What was she up to? Was there more to this affair than just cheating? My instinct screamed that Emily was planning something sinister, something that went beyond betrayal. I needed to get out of there, to protect myself, but my feet felt glued to the floor. Emily was nowhere to be found. Panic set in as I realized this wasn't just about infidelity, it was about survival. After finding that ominous note and the shattered window, I knew something was horribly wrong. My mind was racing, trying to piece together what Emily's endgame was. Was she planning to leave me? Or was there something darker at play? First things first, I needed to find her. I grabbed my phone, but with the power out, the battery was dangerously low. Luckily, Mike had given me a portable charger earlier, just in case things went south. I called out her name, but there was no response. The house felt colder, eerier, like it was holding its breath. I decided to check the security cameras we had installed around the house. If Emily had been up to something, maybe the footage would give me a clue. Heading to the study, I booted up my laptop and accessed the live feeds. Most cameras showed the usual spots: living room, kitchen, backyard. But there was one camera I didn't recognize, tucked away behind a bookshelf in the hallway. Had I missed installing it, or was Emily hiding it? Curiosity piqued, I zoomed in on the footage from that camera. My heart sank as I watched the last 24 hours unfold. There she was, Emily, meeting up with Jason Thompson multiple times. They were sneaking around, exchanging more than just flirtatious texts. I saw her copying something from my desk, a folder labeled Case Files. What the hell was she up to? Before I could process it, a loud bang echoed from downstairs. I froze, every nerve on high alert. Was it her? Or something else? I grabbed a flashlight and cautiously made my way to the staircase, every step creaking under my weight. As I reached the bottom, I saw Emily standing by the front door, looking disheveled and furious. "You shouldn't have looked," she hissed, her eyes wild with anger. "Emily, what the hell is going on?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady despite the fear gnawing at me. She smirked, holding up a small vial. "This is just a taste of what's to come, John. You wanted revenge, didn't you? Well, now it's your turn to face the consequences." My mind raced. Was she planning to poison me? Or worse? I needed to think fast. "Emily, please, let's talk about this. There's no need for threats." She laughed bitterly. "Talk? You want to talk? After 3 years of lies and deceit? No, John. You deserve better. You deserve to feel what I felt." Before I could react, she lunged at me, the vial aimed straight for my face. Reflexes kicked in, I dodged to the side, the vial shattering on the floor. A cloud of noxious fumes enveloped us both. I coughed uncontrollably, eyes burning, struggling to see through the haze. Through the chaos, I noticed something else, Jason standing in the doorway, a smug grin on his face. "Looking for this?" he taunted, holding up a small device. "This is just the beginning, John. Emily and I have been planning this for a long time." My mind was spinning. Emily and Jason together, plotting against me? It was like something out of a nightmare. "Why? What do you want?" I managed to gasp out. Emily stepped forward, her anger replaced by a cold determination. "We wanted to teach you a lesson. You were always so perfect, so in control. Now, it's our turn to take control of your life." I staggered back, trying to steady myself. "You think ruining me will make you happy? You'll end up alone, just like I might." Jason chuckled. "Oh, we're just getting started. You have no idea what's coming, John." As the fumes continued to cloud my vision, I knew I had to act fast. I reached for my phone, dialing Mike once more. "Mike, I need you. Now." After what felt like an eternity, the fumes began to clear, and I managed to get the call through. Mike picked up immediately. "John? What's wrong?" "Meet me at the house. It's urgent. They're planning something bad." Within minutes, Mike arrived, and we quickly assessed the situation. Emily and Jason were nowhere to be seen, but the evidence of their plan was all around us. The device Jason had shown me was a sophisticated remote detonator, clearly not just about poisoning. They were planning something much bigger, something that could destroy us both. After that terrifying confrontation with Emily and Jason, Mike and I are now facing what feels like a full-blown nightmare. Let me break down exactly how we're trying to stay afloat amidst this chaos. First off, we needed to figure out what that remote detonator was all about. Mike, being the tech wizard he is, quickly got to work analyzing the device. After what felt like hours of tinkering, he discovered that it wasn't just a simple detonator, it was linked to multiple explosives around the house. They weren't just trying to poison me, they wanted to destroy our entire home. It's like something out of an action movie, but this was my life. We had to act fast. Mike suggested we look for any additional devices or triggers that might be hidden somewhere. We split up to cover more ground. He took the basement and the garage, while I scoured the bedrooms and the attic. The tension was unbearable, every creak and shadow made my heart race, convinced that Emily and Jason were lurking around every corner, waiting to strike again. As I was rummaging through the attic, I stumbled upon something unexpected, a hidden compartment in one of the old wooden beams. Inside was a stack of documents and photos. My hands shook as I sifted through them, realizing they detailed more than just the affair. Emily and Jason had been planning this for years, meticulously outlining every step of their revenge plan. It wasn't just about ruining me, they wanted to obliterate everything I held dear. One photo, in particular, caught my eye. It was of our wedding day, but Emily's smile looked hollow, almost mocking. Below it was a note, "This is your legacy, John. We're taking it back." My blood boiled. They didn't just want to destroy me, they wanted to erase my entire life. Meanwhile, Mike found something equally disturbing in the basement, another detonator connected to the main one, but this time it had a timer set for midnight. "John, we've got less than 12 hours, he said, his voice tense. "If we don't disarm this, our house, and everything in it, will be gone." Panic set in, but I knew we had to stay calm. Mike and I worked together, following the intricate wiring schematics Emily and Jason had left behind. It was like deciphering a cryptic puzzle, each step bringing us closer to either safety or total annihilation. Just when we thought we were making progress, the lights flickered back on, and Emily and Jason appeared in the doorway, smirking triumphantly. "Did you really think it would be that easy?" Emily taunted, her eyes cold and unforgiving. Before I could react, Jason lunged at me, trying to grab the detonator. Mike was quick to defend, but the struggle escalated quickly. In the chaos, a gunshot rang out. I dove for cover as bullets flew, the sound deafening in the confined space of the basement. Heart pounding, I realized that this wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was a fight for survival. Mike managed to push me out of the line of fire, taking a bullet in the process. Blood pooled around him, but he refused to let go. "We have to finish this," he gasped, clutching his wound. Summoning every ounce of adrenaline, I tackled Jason, managing to wrestle the detonator from his grip. The timer was ticking down, seconds slipping away like sand through an hourglass. With Emily still standing ominously in the doorway, I knew we didn't have much time. Just as the timer hit the final 5 seconds, I managed to disable the device, throwing it into a nearby furnace. The room filled with smoke and heat, forcing us all to back away. Emily screamed in rage, and Jason, realizing the plan was thwarted, tried to make a run for it. But before he could escape, the front door burst open, and police officers swarmed in, guns drawn. "Freeze! Drop your weapons," one of them commanded. Emily and Jason stood motionless, caught in the act. It was over. As the adrenaline began to wear off, I looked down at Mike, who was bleeding but still conscious. "Are you okay?" I asked, panic evident in my voice. He nodded weakly, a small smile forming despite the pain. "We did it, John. We stopped them." The relief was overwhelming, but so was the devastation. My home was a wreck, both physically and emotionally. Emily and Jason were taken into custody, their plans exposed for the world to see. But the damage they'd done was irreparable. Trust shattered, my marriage in ruins, and now, the burden of rebuilding my life alone. Sitting there amidst the rubble, I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. They thought they could destroy me, but in their quest for revenge, they ended up destroying themselves. It was poetic justice, albeit a bittersweet one. After Emily and Jason were hauled off by the police, I thought the worst was behind me. Turns out, life had a few more curveballs to throw my way. The first thing I had to deal with was the sheer devastation of our home. Walking through the wreckage the next morning felt surreal. Shattered glass everywhere, furniture overturned, and scorch marks from the furnace where I had thrown the detonator. It was like a bomb had gone off, both literally and metaphorically. I couldn't believe this was my life now, a perfect marriage turned into a disaster zone overnight. Mike was still recovering from his gunshot wound, and seeing him like that broke my heart. We had been through so much together, but now I felt a new weight of responsibility. I spent the day arranging for medical bills and figuring out how to salvage what little was left of our home. The insurance company was a nightmare, dragging their feet and questioning every detail of the incident. Little did they know, this wasn't just a random act of domestic violence, it was a meticulously planned attack. Emotionally, I was a mess. The initial shock had faded, replaced by a heavy sadness and a lingering anger. I kept replaying that confrontation in my mind, wondering how Emily had gone from the woman I loved to someone who wanted to kill me. Her lies had built a facade that crumbled so violently, leaving nothing but rubble in its place. But the surprises didn't end there. A few days after the incident, I received a call from the DA's office. They wanted to interview me about Emily and Jason's backgrounds. Turns out, Emily wasn't just any marketing exec. She had a history, a string of failed relationships and legal issues that she had meticulously covered up. Jason, on the other hand, was more elusive. Digging deeper, we found out he had connections to some shady business dealings, nothing I ever expected from someone I thought was just Emily's affair partner. As the legal proceedings began, I found myself thrust into the spotlight. Friends and family who once admired our seemingly perfect marriage now saw me as the victim of Emily's deceit. But not everyone was supportive. Some whispered behind my back, questioning why I didn't see the signs sooner or suggesting that maybe I wasn't the perfect husband after all. It hurt, but I knew the truth deep down. At work, things took a downturn too. My reputation as a top lawyer was tainted by the scandal. Clients started pulling out, fearing that my personal life was too chaotic to trust. I had to put my career on hold, which was devastating. All those years building up my practice felt like they were crumbling right alongside my personal life. Amidst all this chaos, I struggled with my emotions. There were nights when I couldn't sleep, haunted by memories of happier times and the stark contrast to my current reality. I felt betrayed on every level, not just by Emily's infidelity, but by the life we had built together. The trust we had was shattered, and rebuilding it seemed impossible. But here's where the unexpected twist comes in. One evening, as I was sifting through the remnants of our home, I found a hidden drawer in my old desk, something Emily had always been paranoid about. Inside were journals, detailing not just the affair, but also hints at a larger plan. It turns out, Emily and Jason had been plotting more than just revenge. They had ties to a local crime ring, and our home was just one of their many targets to destabilize key figures in the community. This revelation flipped everything on its head. It wasn't just a personal vendetta anymore, it was part of something much bigger and more dangerous. Suddenly, my troubles weren't confined to a broken marriage and a ruined home. I was now entangled in a web of criminal activity that threatened not only my safety but also the safety of those around me. Realizing the gravity of the situation, I knew I couldn't handle this alone. I reached out to Mike, who despite his injuries, was determined to help me navigate this new threat. Together, we started piecing together the extent of Emily and Jason's connections, uncovering layers of deception that went far beyond what I had initially imagined. As I sit here writing this, the weight of everything feels almost unbearable. The person I trusted most in the world turned out to be the architect of my downfall, and now I'm caught in a battle that I never signed up for. But amidst the despair, there's a flicker of determination. I won't let Emily and Jason's actions define me. I'm going to fight back, not just for my life, but to expose the darkness they brought into mine. After uncovering that Emily and Jason were tangled up with a local crime ring, I realized my life was spiraling into something straight out of a thriller novel. But this was my reality, and I had to navigate it the best I could. It all started a week after the house incident. I was still reeling from the police investigation and trying to piece together the fragmented remnants of my life. Mike was on the mend, though his wound was slow to heal, and I couldn't help but feel guilty for dragging him into this mess. Despite everything, his loyalty was unwavering, and I knew I couldn't have come this far without him. One evening, as I was sorting through the documents Emily had left behind, I stumbled upon a coded message. It was hidden within the pages of one of her journals, a pattern of letters and numbers that didn't make any sense at first glance. Determined to crack the code, I reached out to a former colleague, Sarah, who specialized in cryptography. She was hesitant at first, given the sensitive nature of my situation, but seeing my desperation, she agreed to help. Sarah dove into the code with her usual fervor, and after hours of intense work, she cracked it. The message was chilling: Operation Blackout is imminent. All assets must be secured by midnight. My heart raced. Operation Blackout? What the hell was that? Sarah explained that Operation Blackout was a known initiative by the crime ring to seize control of key infrastructures in the city, everything from power grids to financial institutions. If Emily and Jason were involved, it meant they were high-level operatives with significant influence and dangerous intentions. But why target me? I wasn't exactly a high-profile figure, just a lawyer trying to rebuild his life. Then it hit me: during my career, I had unknowingly crossed paths with some of these criminals in a few cases, unknowingly disrupting their plans. Maybe Emily and Jason saw me as a loose end that needed to be tied up. As I processed this new information, another unexpected twist unfolded. Sarah received an anonymous tip-off that someone was watching her house. It was clear that Emily and Jason weren't the only threats anymore; they had eyes everywhere. I knew I had to act fast to protect not just myself but also those who were helping me. With Sarah's help, we traced the coded messages to a safe house on the outskirts of the city. It was time to confront the bigger picture. I contacted Mike, who insisted on coming along despite his injuries. Together, the three of us set out under the cover of darkness, determined to uncover the full extent of the conspiracy. Driving to the safe house was nerve-wracking. Every passing mile felt like a step deeper into danger. When we arrived, the place looked abandoned, but Sarah was right: inside, it was anything but empty. Maps, documents, and electronic equipment were scattered everywhere, evidence of the crime ring's expansive operations. As we delved deeper into the safe house, we found a detailed plan outlining Operation Blackout's timeline and the roles each member was supposed to play. Shockingly, Emily was listed as the coordinator, and Jason was her right-hand man. It was clear they weren't just seeking revenge; they were instrumental in executing this large-scale operation that could devastate the entire city. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from the hallway. We froze, hearts pounding. Out of the shadows emerged Detective Mark Reynolds, a figure I recognized from one of my past cases. But something was off. His usually calm demeanor was replaced with a cold, calculating look. "Looking for something, John?" he sneered, stepping closer. Or should I say, the perfect lawyer who thought he could outsmart us. Before I could respond, the room was swarmed by armed men, members of the crime ring, no doubt tipped off about our investigation. Panic set in as we realized we were trapped. Mike, despite his injury, grabbed a nearby metal rod, ready to fight. Sarah, always the quick thinker, found a way to disable the lights, plunging the room into darkness. "Run," she whispered urgently. We didn't hesitate. Adrenaline surged as we sprinted through the maze-like corridors, dodging gunfire and trying to stay one step ahead of our pursuers. The chaos was overwhelming, but survival instincts kicked in, pushing us forward. Just when it seemed like we might make it out, Mark cornered us in a dead-end hallway. "You're not going anywhere," he declared, weapon drawn. But before he could make a move, the sound of sirens wailed in the distance. The crime ring had attracted unwanted attention, and law enforcement was closing in. Seeing their opportunity, Mike and Sarah tackled Mark, subduing him long enough for the police to arrive. A fierce gunfight erupted, and amidst the turmoil, Emily and Jason tried to escape, but not before Sarah managed to retrieve a crucial piece of evidence, a hard drive containing all the details of Operation Blackout. With the police now involved, the tide began to turn. Officers swarmed the building, taking down the remaining members of the crime ring. Emily and Jason were apprehended, their plans exposed and thwarted by our relentless pursuit of the truth. As the dust settled, I couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and exhaustion. We had managed to prevent a catastrophe, but at a significant cost. Mike, though injured, was hailed as a hero, and Sarah's expertise had been invaluable in unraveling the conspiracy. Sitting in the aftermath, amidst the wreckage of the safe house, I reflected on how everything had unraveled. Emily's lies and deceit had set off a chain reaction that nearly destroyed us all. But in the process, I found allies I never knew I had and discovered a strength within myself that I never knew existed. However, the journey wasn't over. As we left the safe house, a lingering question remained: how deep did the crime ring's influence go, and were there still threats lurking in the shadows? The battle against corruption and betrayal was far from over, but for now, we had won a significant victory. I thought taking down the crime ring and getting Emily and Jason arrested would be the end of this nightmare. But as it turns out, loose ends have a way of unraveling everything you think you've tied up. A few days after the safe house raid, I was back at my office, trying to piece my professional life together. The damage to my reputation lingered, but the evidence Sarah recovered, especially the hard drive, gave law enforcement enough ammo to dismantle most of the criminal network. Emily and Jason were facing serious charges, and it looked like they'd spend the next few decades rotting in prison. Still, something felt unfinished. It started with a phone call. No number. No name. Just a voice I didn't recognize. "You think this is over, John?" the voice said, calm and deliberate. "We're still watching. And we're not done." My blood ran cold. I didn't know if it was a bluff, a desperate attempt to rattle me, or something worse. But I wasn't about to stick around and wait to find out. I immediately called Mike, who insisted we meet in person. When I arrived, he was sitting with Sarah, both looking grim. "It's not over," Sarah said flatly. "The files we pulled? They only scratched the surface. There's more." "More?" I repeated, barely keeping it together. Mike nodded. "Emily and Jason weren't the masterminds, they were pawns. The real players are still out there, and they know you're a threat." The realization hit me like a sledgehammer. I hadn't just survived their plan, I'd pissed off some very powerful people by stopping it. The fact that I was still breathing felt more like a countdown than a victory. Sarah suggested we go public, release everything we had to the media and law enforcement, exposing everyone involved. It was risky, but the alternative was staying silent and waiting for the hammer to fall. We decided to move fast. Within 48 hours, Sarah uploaded the files online, sharing them with journalists and authorities. It caused an uproar. Politicians, business leaders, and high-ranking officials were implicated, sending shockwaves through the city. And then Emily made her move. I got a letter, handwritten, from prison. It was short, but it hit me harder than I expected. "You think you've won, John? You think this is justice? All you've done is burn everything to the ground. And guess what? I'll see you when the smoke clears." I didn't know what she meant until I saw the news the next day. Emily had cut a deal with the feds. She was going to testify against the higher-ups in exchange for a reduced sentence. Jason, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. He died in custody under mysterious circumstances, which didn't surprise me one bit. The deal didn't sit right with me. Emily was playing the long game, using her knowledge to save herself. And as much as I hated to admit it, she was smart enough to pull it off. In the weeks that followed, I tried to move forward. I sold the house and moved into a smaller place. Mike eventually recovered and decided to take an extended vacation. He deserved it. Sarah got hired by a cybersecurity firm, finally putting her talents to use somewhere safer. As for me, I focused on rebuilding my career, my sanity, my trust in people. It wasn't easy. Every noise in the middle of the night, every shadow in the corner of my vision still put me on edge. But I was alive, and I'd be damned if I let Emily's betrayal define the rest of my life. The last twist came months later. I got another letter, this time with no return address. Inside was a single sentence. Tick, tock, John. No signature. No explanation. I didn't report it to the police. What was the point? If someone wanted me dead, they'd find a way. But instead of fear, something else settled in my chest, a fire. I'd already survived their worst. If they wanted to come for me again, they'd better be ready for a fight. And as I sat there, holding that note, I realized something: this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of the next chapter.